What's up, everybody? It's the Wrestling Informer. We're back again. I'm Kev. I'm from the Lingus Mafia podcast. You can find all my nonsense at Lingus Mafia. I am joined by your number one source for all your wrestling news, and he's in the Big Apple. He just came from watching the Yankees get swept by the Mets. That's Mr. Billy Body. What's happening, Billy?
Yeah, it was a crazy game. It was like crazy atmosphere. I've never seen so many people in a stadium. I didn't know that they sell standing room only tickets on top of the seats, and there's no room like around the outside of the stadium. Like the queues for food and whatnot is absolutely ridiculous. Like there's people like coming out of the ceiling in that place. That was the most packed out stadium I've been to. That blows away Mania and soccer games and everything.
Wow.
I would say, I don't know what the actual attendance is, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was over 80,000 people.
Yeah, all of New York is there, so they're only rooting, they have two teams and they're both in one stadium. So we're doing something special, Billy, and I wanted you to talk about it and tell the good fans out there who watch this show what's going on.
Yeah, we're doing something a little bit different this week. I think it'll be semi-appreciated. I'm not too sure sometimes with this audience. So we are launching a lock betting podcast. Now, lockbetting.com is my pay service. It has delivered, will have delivered 110 months in a row of transparent chat profit. That means for over 9 years and 2 months to be exact, I haven't had a single losing month in sports betting. I'm just 10 months away from being able to say I haven't had a losing month in a decade. But that content is all primarily behind a paywall, other than what I do for the Sports Gambling podcast. But they primarily want me to cover soccer. I do a little bit of NFL with Cav. I do some tennis now and then. We cover the big fights over there. But there's a big demand for me to do more sports betting content. And I'm not just talking about what's behind a paywall. There's a lot of stuff that people want. And at the moment, it is behind a paywall. But I have no issue bringing it out behind that paywall, because what those clients are paying for, they're primarily paying for the picks. The bonus podcasts are bonus podcasts, and they are exactly that. They're a bonus. And for us to take some of them away and put them on a free feed, I think that will be beneficial to me. I think it'll be beneficial to the audience. I think it will help the audience grow. And more free content is obviously always appreciated. So we're going to launch that this weekend. That is where we're going to be doing our Summerslam preview. So me, Cav, and various special guests are going to be on there, breaking down some of the matches from SummerSlam. We are going to be looking at it from a betting perspective, as we will do for all of the shows there. So if you want to get that show and you want to subscribe to it, head over to lockbetting.com on iTunes. This is something absolutely free, no paywall, not asking you to pay for anything. Just head over there and subscribe, and you'll get the first show. And there'll be wrestling guests on there talking with us. Now, one of those guests is Eric Bischoff. Eric Bischoff has a new book coming out, which we spoke to him about. We also talked to him about celebrity involvement in wrestling, pertaining to Logan Paul in this instance, because obviously you get sections of this audience that are talking about how Logan Paul is a poor investment and how can you get rid of Cesaro and Daniel Bryan and guys like this, all the guys they let go and then invest the money in Logan Paul. Well, Eric Bischoff explains the advantages and disadvantages, the pros and cons, the whys and the why nots, and why you do this. And obviously, as a guy who's hired Dennis Rodman and Leno and others, he knows exactly what he's talking about in this situation. So we spoke to him about that. We spoke to him about his book. This is a guest who's in the lockbetting.com or the Lockbetting podcast. He's on that show. But this is a portion of the show that I have decided to give away to you guys for free. So you can watch the video version here coming up after me and Cav finish talking. We're going to be very, very brief. We're going to be on here for 4 or 5 minutes more longer, and then we're going to hand you straight over to Bischoff, and you can get a sample of what's on that Lockbetting show. And then if you want to hear the rest of the SummerSlam preview with me and Cav, looking at the betting lines, along with our other guests, then all you need to do is subscribe to the lockbetting.com podcast. And I keep saying lockbetting.com. This doesn't have the .com on it. Lockbetting.com is where you can subscribe. Lockbetting is where you'll get the podcast. And it'll be the same for the YouTube channel. The podcast will be out on Friday. we're also aiming to have the YouTube videos up on the new Lock Betting YouTube channel as well by Friday. Hopefully we can get that done. But yeah, the podcast definitely out by Friday, so make sure you check it out. Anything to say before we hand over to Bischoff?
Yeah, you went to Raw this last week. It has. I'm expecting it to get better because Vince is gone. Plain and simple. I think it needs that breath of fresh air. And I've thought if Triple H took over, I've been a proponent of Triple H being able to fix this and do better with what has been going on. Like if NXT was labeled Raw back in the day, it would have been fine. Did you see anything different, or do you think this is going to take a little time? You got to roll it a little bit before the new storylines that he implements and more of his direction gets put in there. Usually you get a little frenzied from actually being there in person and thinking the show is better than it really is. I think we've all fell into that before when I've been at a show in San Jose and I was like, oh, the show is actually good. And you're at home going, it's the same old nonsense, but I'm there, so it feels maybe different. Did you have any feeling like that?
I think the feeling was, I wouldn't say it was like, I wouldn't go as far as saying it felt like the air was coming out of the balloon as the show was going on. But I think it started very, very hot. I think people felt like, okay, right, like we started with the Logan Paul Miz thing, a weird, unique way of starting the brawl straight off the bat. And then you had Meltzer tried to issue. See, Meltzer was funny this week. He had an explanation as to, they did that so Logan Paul wouldn't get booed. Like they had a brawl at the start. And then he turned around and Roman Reigns gave that great line, like the line of the night where he said, your daddy's gone. Amazing. And Dave turned around and went, that was in reference to Johnny Gargano.
It's amazing. It's amazing. I didn't even know what he was talking about when he said
Alvarez goes to him. He goes, no, I think it was in reference to Vince. And
maybe Vince.
And Dave goes, I guess that could work too.
He said, I didn't even think about that. It never occurred to me. I'm like, wow.
It's like, so Dave thought they threw out a line that, 400,000 people would understand instead of a line that millions would understand and appreciate, including the mainstream media, casual fans. Everybody pretty much took it another way. And he was like going, that was in reference to Johnny Gargano. It's like he's just literally sitting there making up his own stories. Like now he's just doing it live as well.
I mean, we've all been there where you say something, you go, boy, I'm a moron. Why didn't I think this or something? But that is like a major, he had to put his head under the desk and be like, what's wrong? How could I have not realized that? I'm sure it only could be that. There's no way. After he thought about it, he had to be like, well, of course that's what that was. What's wrong with me? Because I don't have any clue what the reference is about Gargano. He called him his daddy or something.
He said to Alvarez, he goes, I didn't even think of that. He goes, I didn't even think it could be Vince. So why do you think, what did you think they went ooh for? Like,
because they all watched NXT 100 years ago when this happened. Do you even recall what happened? Like why he thinks that? Oh, do you remember this Gargano storyline?
Yeah, there was a group called The Way, and it had Austin Theory in it, and they were trying to mentor him. That's it.
Oh wow, and that's what wow. That's so great. Other than that, did you see anything else in the show?
Yeah, no. So my point is that there was a feeling, obviously, when we were there, everybody was like, "Oh my God, Triple H's first show. Vince is gone. Is Vince going to come out? Is Triple H going to talk to us?" Like, it's a smart crowd. Everybody knew.
Sure.
I think obviously there's going to be periods where it's going to be quick. It's going to be like fast and slow. That's how Raw is with 3 hours. You accept that, but I think once the Mysterios were interrupted, and you didn't get Edge, and it wasn't a case of, we're going to do something every hour, because I was expecting something big every on every hour.
It's like, MSG.
Yeah. So I expected 4 big things to happen, 4 significant things on those hour points, but we didn't get that, and it felt like a case of, let's just get through this week. Let's just get through these stories. don't even change too much, because I almost feel like the share price going up, and it went up a lot, was something where they turned around and said, made them turn around and say, don't rock the boat. Let's not do anything. Like, and that was crazy as well, because that's almost a response where people turn around and went, oh, thank God Vince is gone. We feel like happier that this company's moving in a direction of Nick Khan and Stephanie is CEO. We have people in there like, late 40s, early 50s now, like primarily steering the ship, not this erratic, controversial 77-year-old man or whatever he is. So I was surprised, but it does make sense, because it makes sense for us, because we know he's been standing in the way of the product, but we've also always been told that the product doesn't matter too much as long as the share price goes up. But it comes a point where, the ratings need to stop going down. Otherwise, there's going to be no audience left. Or it's going to be that core audience that AEW have, which isn't going to be enough to justify the renewal money that they want from the networks. Otherwise, why couldn't AEW go to Fox and say that, we could get 2 million people on your channel? So they couldn't, but they could say that. But the fact is that it's turned out to be that Vince was somebody that made shareholders concerned, as opposed to being seen as this stabilizing positive factor. And I feel like they didn't want to do anything crazy with the product on Monday because of the fact that the share price has gone up. We may see slow improvements. I see no doubt that we'll see a more consistent product, less paint by numbers, less stupid stuff. We'll see the right guys being pushed. We'll see the right guys hired. Scarlett and Karrion Kross will be back in that company by the end of the year, I think. So, yeah, I think we'll see these. I think we'll see things. I think we'll see. I even think I'll go out and say that I'll push the boat out and say we'll see Sasha wrestling in WWE again.
Wow. Okay, you heard
it. I don't know this.
Sure.
I'm
it's your
actually
opinion.
having a holiday, so I'm not on the phone to people and everything. But a couple of people I get stuff off, I'm going to see them tomorrow. So actually, I've changed my flight, so tomorrow's Thursday. So I'm going to see them Friday.
All right, you're heading to Tennessee Friday.
No, I'm heading to Tennessee tomorrow. I was originally going on Thursday night, but I was going from JFK, and I'm in a hotel near LaGuardia now for the game.
Mm-hmm.
So I found a LaGuardia flight, and the thing is, the other flight I'll just lose the money on it, right? But the flight cost $75 each for the flight.
Oh, that's
the
cheap.
Taxi from here to JFK is $89. So I'm only going to be losing $60 by taking the free shuttle from this hotel to LaGuardia and paying for these new flights. And also my travel insurance, I may get the other flights back anyway. If I don't, I lose $60. But I currently have 2 flights out of here tomorrow, 2 options. But I'm going to take the morning one and get to Nashville tomorrow, because like I said, the taxi's 90 and the free shuttle here, I get out of here earlier, get to Nashville and just settle. I mean, there's nothing for me to do in New York. I went to Raw. I went to see the Yankees tonight, and
now you went to see the Mets tonight.
Yeah, I've been to I went to Bronx Zoo yesterday.
Oh, no kidding.
I mean, I've done everything here. Like, this is
sure.
This is like 10, 15 times I've been there. Like, even Austin's done World Trade, Empire State Building, the Nickelodeon Park, the American Dream Water Park, Six Flags. It's been done. So, yeah, I'm only here for the events.
I was born there, and I think you have visited it more times than I have since I've been gone.
Yeah.
I wouldn't doubt it. I rarely go back.
Well, I hate England, so.
That's interesting, because I would much prefer to be in Chicago than New York, by far. I just think it's a less nasty city.
This is not my favorite state to be in.
No.
I'll be in my.
You like Florida?
I'll be in my favorite state. Yeah, this time next week. This time next week, I'll get through the weekend, and on Monday I'll be in Florida.
So before we hand it off,
Mhm.
do you have promise then for the future of this product for WWE with the new wrestler? Do you trust Triple H or no?
I think I have more faith in what we'll see. I don't know. Look, with Nick Khan there, you're in a better position to look after the 2Ks and the Mattels and all. I mean, there's too many like marks now that get involved in all that side of the thing where it's like, you hear this tribalism between AEW and WWE where it's like, AEW only drew this rating and WWE made this much money on their stock report. Who gives a f-? That's like turning around and saying like, oh, my soccer team or my NFL team generated like $70 million in profit last year. It's like that's not what we're not there to worry about that stuff. With the sports team, I look at this the same way. Whereas I want them to win. I support AEW and WWE because I have to watch it. You think I want to watch AEW show which is boring with botches and where they don't get the right characters over? Like, I don't want to see that. I want to see them like putting on a 5-star show. So WWE's loses viewers to them, and they have to put on a 5-star. They have to put on a 5-star show to get their viewers back, and we see like a proper head-to-head tussle. Like that's what I want to see. I don't want to see anybody doing badly. I support wrestling in general, so I need it all to be a lot better, because if it's better, then it's better for me to watch. Who goes into a cinema, invests $20 and says, I hope this is bad.
Yeah.
Like it's so dumb. Like, why would you not support everything you're going to sit through?
And I think you root against the fans more than you do against the product, because it was like growing up over here, Bay Area. Yeah, you hated the Raiders because the fans were. So you were like, oh, F the Raiders. Meanwhile, I don't care about the Raiders. I got no problem with them winning. But those fans make me sick. And when I'm rooting for AEW and I think the product's good at times, I see those fans that are annoying as hell. And you're like, you almost root for the failure because you want to stick it to those people. But it's a stupid way to think.
But it will fail if they book for those people, because those people want something different. Those people want something niche, which doesn't draw a casual audience. And if you continue to appease those people, the thing you've got to understand is that those people are not going. Like MSG, I went with my buddy Nick, and he told me that MSG sold out with a Sami Zayn and Seth Rollins main event once recently. So it sells out of Roman, it sells out of Brock, it sells out with Sami Zayn. Like MSG sells out because your core audience is based in the East Coast. So WrestleMania Philadelphia next after this one, that'll sell out both nights, no doubt. Like the New Yorkers and the people from Boston and the guys in Philly, like they're in Connecticut, wherever, like they'll all sell those 2 nights out. There's going to be no issue selling out Philadelphia for a couple of nights, because this is where the core audience is based. So that's ECW country as well. But I have more faith in Triple H with that side of things, and I have faith that the share price and everything will stay intact, because they have the right person there to help that stay where it is. So for a long time I haven't seen what purpose Vince has really served, other than the fact that you have to respect the fact that he built this. But that is really sort of that over the years has really lost its value, or lost its charm, I think is a better word, because it's been like, okay, you gave us the Attitude Era, you gave us Hulk Hogan, you gave us Hogan era, the Attitude Era, and then even the Ruthless Aggression era was pretty good. For me, I prefer it. And then we had the PG era, and it's like, okay, like you can give us 5-6 bad years to like after that, but eventually we're going to have to start like saying it's time for a change. It's time for a change. I feel like he's gone way past that. I feel like the last almost 12 years hasn't really been acceptable. Like, hasn't been up to the. I don't think that. I find it very difficult to see anybody starting this product in the last. Let's put it that way. Anyone that's starting it in the last 12 years, I find it very difficult to understand why they started watching.
Unless they're children.
Yeah, and I've got one here. Like, I've got a child here, and he started watching with me. But even his attention wanes when he started. Like, he found himself into like Punk and Bryan and Brock and Ryback and all these people that were there. And even in that time, that there isn't those stars there now. There's the levels of stars are very, very different. Where you have Brock and Roman, and even when Cena comes in, and that beating these people means something. As much as you can tell me that you can put McIntyre and Rollins and these guys on top, and Lashley, whoever, we've seen all of these guys get beaten a lot over the years. Like, there's even a point where when guys are out of their push sequence, like, for example, when McIntyre was unbeatable and then he lost the title and then he was trying to win it back, they decided he could constantly lose to Lashley. Lashley could lose to Big E. Then McIntyre could be the first challenger to Big E and lose to him. He even took a pinfall to Matt Riddle. So they decided that after he had the big push, that he can have all of these losses. Seth Rollins came into the year. They felt like he could lose every match before Cody, and then he felt like he could lose every match to Cody. And now, we're supposed to forget that Seth Rollins has hardly won any wrestling matches this year. You can't do that. You can do that, and people will still sing someone's music, and people will still buy someone's T-shirt, and people will still turn around and say he's a good wrestler. But when you turn around and say, okay, let's say, for example, this weekend, let's say Brock Lesnar did walk out, and didn't come back, and Seth Rollins had to replace him at the last minute at SummerSlam. Do you accept this guy as without a single pay-per-view win this year, as the number one contender for SummerSlam at the last minute?
No, and there's no, you'd have to go back to the old storyline and go, well, remember, he had a good match before. That would be trying to put a Band-Aid on a problem. And I could get it from that standpoint that you got to do something.
That's I'm sure that disqualification win over Roman at the Royal Rumble, I think, is the only match that Rollins has won this year. On pay-per-view.
Hopefully, Triple H changes the 3 hours to 2. I think that would make a lot of sense.
But then
would help them. I know their money problem with that, though.
What did you think of Rollins' tweet where he says, "I apologize to anyone that bought a ticket and was hoping to see me on Sunday at SummerSlam. I've worked my ass off to make sure I got onto this show, and maybe one day they'll listen." I think that's what he said. I can get the tweet exactly. But
Triple H said, "I'm listening." And so I'm like, but isn't the quote unquote story that he put Riddle out? That's why he doesn't have a match. He's the one who caused it. So
but he's put a tweet out, like a breaking kayfabe tweet. So like a shoot tweet. So we'll see.
Oh, you think so? Oh, I almost took that as stupid. I feel like Meltzer now. I didn't even realize that. No, I figured he was doing part of his character, but that's why I was like, well, it makes no sense because he smashed his head and he's the reason he's off in that.
Yeah, he injured him, so you can't go out there and say I'm sorry to anyone that bought a ticket, because
I thought that was being the bad guy smug, like you bought a ticket for him and everyone goes, F you, I didn't buy a ticket to see you.
No, because he's like going, I've worked hard to go to I'll be on the show. One day they'll listen. So it seems like there's with Rollins, and that's the weird thing too, because I know it's not nowhere near like Undertaker or Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania or anything like that, but Seth Rollins is the SummerSlam guy for the new era. With the outfits and the matches. Let me play Super Geek here and sort of have a run through back from as much as I can remember. I think 2014, I believe he worked with Ambrose. I think that might be correct. I'm not sure. 2015, he worked with Cena. I think we remember that match. Was it Jon Stewart?
Oh God, that SummerSlam, yeah.
But the match was good until that happened.
Yeah,
and he wore the white trunks and whatnot.
I couldn't tell you that's the one. You have this crazy memory with this stuff, not me.
Yeah.
But it does sound right because it was like shocking when he was in all white, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In 16, it skips my memory who he worked with. At 17, I know he was in a really good tag match where him and Ambrose won the belts from Cesaro and Sheamus. And then at 18, I believe he had the best match was at the opener when he beat Dolph Ziggler. And at 19, wow. At 2019, he had the best match again, where he worked with Brock Lesnar in the main to get his belt back after he's cashed in on. Him and Lesnar had a really good long match. At 20, he got a really good match out of Dominic Mysterio. Dominic Mysterio's first match. That was the best match of that SummerSlam as well.
Wow. I can't believe you can remember all that. That's
yeah, and he dressed up as Ray as well, didn't he? Dressed up in Ray's gear. And
I don't know if you should be proud or ashamed. I say it every time you do this. It's fascinating that you could even remember this. I used to be able to back in the day. I probably just.
And what's last year? And last year's match is it's popped out of my head. Do you remember? Edge. Was it Edge? No, I didn't think. Was it?
I don't know.
I think it might. It could be. Why don't you look it up? I don't.
I'm about to right here. 2000.
I think it is. I think it is Edge. You're right.
Yeah, because didn't he have a whole thing? Look at me. I know one actual match.
What's his 2016 match?
Well, look, I'm trying to find.
Do
I need to look?
It's Finn Balor where he injured him.
Oh, he hurt his arm.
Can you say? Do you see what I mean with the run of Rollins' run of matches?
Yeah, he's always had some good stuff. Okay. So all right, let's we're gonna send this on over at this point. Remember, go to where you get your podcasts and look for Lock Betting, and also YouTube Lock Betting, and you'll have our complete show with our SummerSlam spectacular preview that you want to see. And I guess that's really it. We will throw it off to Bischoff now. Check out his book. It is called Grateful. He'll be talking about that at the end of the show. And like usual, he has something innovative, even when it comes to a book. And it's really surprising what I was in shock by what he has put in this book that's never been done before, ever. So that's real interesting. So for Mr. Billy Body, I'm Cav Manning. Take it away, Easy. Now moving on to Logan Paul versus The Miz. Dealing with celebrities, we brought in somebody who has dealt with celebrities over and over again, and it'd be good to get his opinion on it. That is Hall of Famer, Mr. Eric Bischoff.
I'm back. Oh, wait a minute. I won't do that to anybody. I will not sing. I will not inflict that torture on souls known or unknown.
Depends how good you are at it, though. So we'll have to find out. So we're talking about dealing with the celebrity factor coming into the wrestling world, and you dealt with quite a few of them. Billy was going over some things earlier. You want to take it, Billy, about what you were talking about with how rough it might be to deal with celebrities or how easy it might be?
Yeah, I mean, I have one main question. Now, I don't want to turn this into, I don't want to set you up for the quote of the week, any AEW bashing or anything like that, because I know that's very clickbaity. But I just want you to explain to me the difference, what you get when you invest. So AEW spending, say, $5 million on a CM Punk and $3 million on a Daniel Bryan, and they're getting a full-time performer. What do you get when you invest a $3 million into a Logan Paul instead? What's the mindset in that, and what you're getting from that investment instead?
Well, I think with Logan Paul, is that the number? Has that been confirmed, or is that speculation, or is it $3 million for Logan Paul?
That's just what I've heard. Yeah, it's very part-time for $3 million. Yeah.
Okay. But this is important, because is the $3 million for one event, or is it $3 million over the course of several events?
No, he's been getting around $1 million to come in and do one shots, but this is now the contract that he has per year. So it's $3 million per year. We don't know at this point how much he's going to do. I imagine SummerSlam, Royal Rumble, WrestleMania, 100%. So
all right, so he's going to be making multiple appearances for $3 million, correct, over the course of a year. Is that the scope?
That's
so.
Right,
Here's what you get for $3 million,
and that's
I don't know how many.
That's not from Meltzer, so that's from someone more reliable than him.
All right, whatever it is, as long as we acknowledge that we don't know what the number is, and it's speculation at this point.
Okay.
So if it's $3 million, here's what you get. You get a known social media influencer with a tremendous amount of influence, with I don't know how big his following is. Maybe you guys do, or somebody can Google it, or the listeners can.
He has the #1 podcast in the world.
Logan Paul has the #1 podcast in the world?
That's right. At this moment, it's forever changing, but as we're recording, he has the #1 podcast in the world.
So he's more popular than Joe Rogan?
At the moment, yeah. Like for this week's chart, yeah.
All right, so let's just assume that's true. I think that's some spooky shit you got going on right there, brother. I would not put any confidence in that whatsoever. But let's just say it's true, perhaps. He's got a very highly rated, if not the #1 podcast in the world. Sorry, Joe. I'm not buying it either, brother.
This week he has. Yeah. So
all right, let it go. Let it go, Bill. Let it go. Just let it go. We're moving on. Can't stop talking. You're worse than me. I didn't think it was possible. Anyway, you're getting a highly rated podcast. We've established that. You're getting a guy that has a tremendous amount of social media influence outside of his podcast. Don't know his following. I imagine it's massive. I'll be looking it up when we're done. And you're getting a very charismatic guy. He's a great performer. We've seen him, right? It's not like we don't know what we're going to get with this dude. He's committed. And I think he's a great personality. He's a great wrestling character. Are you going to get 5-star matches? I don't even know what that means anymore. I've seen some ridiculous shit on television that's been getting some really rave reviews lately, but it doesn't matter, man. It's all entertainment. And he's bringing a loyal following, a big loyal following, into a universe that is probably new, meaning he's bringing some new viewers along with him, and he's entertaining to the existing viewers. So I think it's a great investment. And that's overall the way I've always looked at celebrities is, what does it do for you? What did Dennis Rodman do for WCW? Dennis Rodman got us more buzz on morning drive, rock talk, sports around the country in every major market and most little markets that we couldn't have afforded to buy. But that's all anybody talked about. It's Dennis Rodman and WCW and Hulk Hogan. Couldn't have bought that. And he was entertaining. He delivered. He was a personality. He was a character. And he performed well enough, more than well enough, to not do any damage. You know, Kevin Green, Carolina Panthers, same thing. Steve McMichael brought Steve McMichael, thoughts, prayers, and just nothing but respect for the toughest that ever walked the face of the earth, in my opinion. What he's going through, and he's doing it with a smile every day. Hats off, brother. Much respect. But Steve McMichael, same way. You can criticize some of his work at the rink, and some of it was a little sketchy because he was put in situations he shouldn't have been. But he also had some fantastic matches. But beyond that, he brought credibility. He was a Super Bowl champion, Chicago Bears, and he had a great character. Karl Malone, same thing. You know, it just you get a lot, and what you really get is crossover, new audience that maybe not wouldn't otherwise check you out, and you get a tremendous amount of free press.
I got one, Billy, here for you. Did you get a lot of backlash from any of the wrestlers? Like, was there a lot of it, or just a smattering of, hey, I'm here all the time. What is this? He's getting paid this.
I never got any of that. Okay. I read that it was happening, but it wasn't.
They would never bring
that's
it up
a perception that it might be happening, but it wasn't, because the talent knew. You know, wrestlers are smart suckers, man. They know what it takes to get attention. They know what it takes to get buzz and to get people talking about you. They might not have liked it necessarily, but they were glad to be on the card with him. They were happy to mug for a photo shot with him, and hopefully will end up in the paper. No, they got it. And nobody really complained. Everybody was, at least that I could see, was very supportive.
From the way you're speaking, there doesn't seem to be too much of a gamble element to it. I expected to be.
Oh, there can be. David Arquette.
Is there a
There's the other side of the coin.
Well, but before we talk about the in-ring, the promos, and the creative side of things, where I would think more could go wrong, when you look at the investment side of things, is there a minimum bar that you set? For example, we want X number of viewers from this. We want X amount of publicity from this. Is there ever a minimum that you set with any signing?
No, man, you got to look with Dennis Rodman, Karl Malone. And again, remember, NBA finals were going on at the time, and there was a lot of buzz and chatter anyway. There's no way to quantify the dollar value. There's no way to put a valuation on the amount of advertising that you're going to get because you're guessing. You're going by instinct. And, now if you're hoping that you're going to get a ton of press from a, mid-level, professional athlete that isn't really normally in the paper and isn't very controversial and isn't very well known, but he's on the roster, it's legitimately a, NFL player, NBA player, but nobody really knows him. Now, if you're betting big money on that, you've got a bad instinct. But with the Malones and the Rodmans and, the Kevin Greens and Reggie White and, known commodities like we've used, there was no way to try to quantify it. You just went with your gut.
Is Jay Leno probably the best investment that you did for this because of the platform that he had, being able to be on every night, and you could possibly, hey, maybe we could do something tonight on the Tonight Show that pushes this, and it's big time advertisement on a larger scale.
See, and that's the other thing that I'm glad you brought that up. Jay Leno was a whole different strategy. Look, Jay Leno, I knew the wrestling audience was going to gag on their toenails on that one. I just knew people would be turning themselves inside out with Jay Leno, wrestling fans. But here's what I also knew. I knew every advertiser in the industry on Park Avenue, the people that really matter when it comes to the television business, because without them, there would be no audience. They would look at it way differently than a wrestling fan would, right? And you have to cater to both. You have to serve 2 or 3 different masters if you want to actually grow your business and build a business and not a, super indie trust fund wrestling show. If you want to build, you have to build it out in different ways. And being able to creatively use the Tonight Show the way we did to shoot an angle that led to a match over the course of weeks, and that access to the Tonight Show, advertisers look at that a lot different than wrestling fans do. Trust me, and dirt sheet writers. It was a very valuable strategy, but no way to quantify it. I was betting on the future. I was betting on sitting in a meeting, making a presentation to, let's say, GTX Motor Oil, for example, and being able to show them clips of WCW as a mainstream entertainment property. And I don't know, having your Hulk Hogan and myself and taking over the Tonight Show and showing advertisers that didn't really know anything about wrestling, that no, this is a lot more than just wrestling. Mm-hmm. No, this is mainstream entertainment here. And here's an example that has a lot of value from a sales position.
So, in terms of when you say you couldn't quantify it, do you think that modern day metrics would assist you, or do you not buy into those? So when you're looking at social media retweets, YouTube views, if you're a promoter right now, say there's Vince, there's Tony Khan, and Eric Bischoff has a third company, and you bring in a Logan Paul or you bring in somebody in this day and age, and you have a YouTube video that has 7 million views and 1 million retweets. Is that something that you would be celebrating? Is that a metric where you can weigh it up, or do you not really believe in these these modern day metrics that these promoters are celebrating?
Oh no, it's not that I wouldn't believe in it. I would recognize it. I would be grateful for it. 7 million views, assuming I'm monetizing my YouTube channel. Cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. Just add it to the pot, right? It's reaching an audience. Some of those 7 million YouTube views may not be people that generally watch my show every week. That's added value. There's value in that. How to put a valuation on it? If I'm bringing in somebody for $1 million for one appearance, do I say, well, that YouTube exposure is worth, I don't know, $100,000, 50, 10, 2, 1? I don't know. I'm sure there's a formula to figure that out, because again, you could monetize part of that, right? So you can assign a percentage of that $3 million you'd recoup from that YouTube monetization. And then you have to kind of, guesstimate, what percentage of those 7 million people are going to perhaps buy your pay-per-view that might not have otherwise bought it. And you got to add that to the pot. But what you're really doing too is you're branding. And in that particular case, just like I did with Jay Leno, if I'm WWE or if I'm, AEW, I'm going to say, hey, Mr. Advertiser, Mr. Sponsor, Mr. Building Management Board, here's how popular, you're negotiating, right? You're either selling something or selling yourself. I'm taking that information and I'm putting it in front of the people that I do business with to establish, the mainstream nature of what we're doing and the reach of what we're doing. So it absolutely has value. I just wouldn't know how to put a valuation on it.
We're going to move on to your book in a second, but I have one final question to move off the subject. I listen to a lot of other people's podcasts, unfortunately, and there is there's a type of podcast out there, and they're all making the same kind of comments. When you bring in a Logan Paul or a Pat McAfee or whoever, there's always these comments saying, "Oh, they're getting paid X, Y, and Z," and you could have kept carrying Cross for this merch. You could have. How could they fire Keith Lee when he was earning like 1/10 of what they're paying this guy? This is always the comment. They fired a lot of people, and now they're using the money for these purposes, and it receives a lot of criticism. What would you say to these people where they're criticizing that WWE are investing their money here after releasing so many people?
What would I say?
Yeah.
Off.
I knew it was coming. I would expect it to come. But is it more of, put asses in seats and those wrestlers would have stayed?
It's a business. Damn it. It's like you're wrestling. Oh, man, they spent all that money over here and they could have held on to that guy. Who cares? If that guy was making money, if it was a business, it is a business. And if that individual guy or gal was moving the needle, then guess what?
Do you ever look at anybody do you ever look at anybody in WWE? Have you seen anybody that has been released and you think, there might have been something there? Is there anybody that you've ever?
No, I don't watch
Bray Wyatt. That's about it.
But here's the thing, guys. You don't know what was going on behind the scenes. None of us do, right? Unless you were there. It may not. Who knows why that decision was made? I've let go of people that everybody thought I let go of them for one reason or maybe another. And the real reason I let them go had nothing to do with that. And unless you have all of the information and the knowledge and or experience, look it up. You're ignorant. Google ignorant, and the definition is lack of information or experience. That's what ignorance, that's the definition of it. And when someone gets let go, you don't really know what led up to that. You can say, wow, it was budget cuts, because guess what? That's a nice way when you work for somebody. If you get let go, and you get let go because of budget cuts, not because, what are they supposed to say? Guy or girl just didn't draw, wasn't worth it, didn't learn fast enough, has no charisma, couldn't cut a promo to save their life. Is that what you want them to say? Mm-hmm. Or do they evaluate talent and say, okay, we get to have so many people with this budget. Let's thin the herd and keep the people that we think have the most potential and let the rest go because we have to manage our budget. So those people, therefore, are let go for budget cuts. But the truth is they're let go for other reasons. You and I and the dirt sheet universe and the people that write that crap have no idea what was really going on behind the scenes.
One question before we get to your book that I have for you. It's not that relevant to this exactly, but it's a question I've had for you for a while. When it comes to being creative, I think a lot of people, including myself, think you're a very creative mind in what you've done throughout the years. When I've done things, a YouTube channel or writing bits and everything, I get my ideas while either long drive, long walk, or in the shower. Where do your ideas come from? Is there a specific thing that you usually do and they flood into you, or anything out of the ordinary?
I've had my best. It's funny because I'm preparing for Starrcast next week, and I'm roasting Ric Flair, so I've got to get up on the stage and try to be funny. And I'm not a funny guy by nature. I'm not. I know I'm not. So but I have to come up with my 8 to 12 minutes or whatever it is. And I had to get on a treadmill because that part of my brain doesn't really kick in unless I kind of elevate my energy a little bit. Okay. And I have to do it naturally. I can't
sit down,
snort an 8-ball and drink a half a pot of coffee and try to think of funny shit. That doesn't work. You know what I mean? I've got to get my endorphins going is really what I got to do. So I haven't been on a treadmill in about 3 years, but this morning, knowing I had to sit down and write for a couple hours, first thing I did is got on a treadmill for 45 minutes and gassed myself out. Took a cold shower and sat down, and it just started to flow. I can see it in my head. And even going back to WCW, some of the best ideas that I've had, really, I came up with on a treadmill. That's my go-to. It doesn't look like it, which means I probably haven't had a good idea in about 7 years from the looks of things.
That's good, though. That's good. Finding out. That's interesting. There's a treadmill. So you have a book coming out. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, the book is called Grateful. I co-wrote it with Guy Evans, who wrote the Nitro book, The Incredible Rise and the Inevitable Fall of Ted Turner's WCW Nitro. A fantastic book. And that's how I met Guy. And Guy came to me around a year ago or so and said, "Hey, do you ever think about writing another book?" I said, "No. What would I write about?" And he said, "How about the last 15 years of your life and everything that, you've kind of been through?" And Guy follows me. We became fairly good friends, and he follows me on social media, and he listens to my podcast, and he noticed that I often talk about being grateful. I have it tattooed on my wrist right there, right there.
There you go.
And I've had it for about 15 years or 10. So, but over the years, especially the last 6 or 7, certain things have happened in my life, good and bad, that have really, really changed the way I look at my entire career. And Grateful is really about those stories that are not, they're kind of wrestling related, but they're not. They're about people that I've met and stories that I've heard, and how I've realized that what we all do, or what we all did in my case, really affects people. And sometimes in a very, very positive way that you could never imagine. The book starts out telling a story about a young lady that I met at a Comic-Con. And I heard her story. And you read about it in the book, but it was a very, very, for me, life-changing moment. And then all of a sudden that kind of opened my eyes. And I started looking when I'd go to personal appearances. I talk about an indie show that I went to in New Mexico because I hated going to shows like that. I never used to do personal appearances. I hated doing autograph sessions, but I was bouncing off the bottom, man, financially. I've had a tough couple of years. I bounced out, man. 7-figure income. I'm in good shape. Beautiful home, beautiful wife. Life's good. I had to reinvent myself and bounce back. But over the course of the last 5 or 6 years, 7 years, man, I've been bouncing off the bottom. And every time I'd go to one of these indie shows, because I had to, it's like, ugh. And I went to an indie show in New Mexico, and something happened, and I talk about it in the book, that made me go, "God, you're such a, you don't appreciate what you should be appreciating." And then it's just, once I started thinking about, okay, I got to be a little more aware and grateful of certain things, and because I'm looking at it wrong, it changed everything for me. Not only with regard to doing those events and how I felt about them, but I just started realizing, I'm making my comeback. I'm 66, 64, 65 years old over the course of this period. When most people my age are retiring, right? Hanging out with the grandkids and playing golf, driving around a little putt golf cart. I'm scraping, trying to hang on to I'm filing Chapter 11, business bankruptcy, not personal bankruptcy. It didn't write the debts off. I had to pay those, and I paid them off. I had 6 years to pay them off, and I got out of it in 3. I paid every nickel of it and came out of it. But the reason I was able to do that is because I started becoming grateful for some of the things that I saw around me and being more aware of it. And that's what the book's about. It's not like I'm not trying to be Tony Robbins. I'm not. I'm still up in many ways. But it's a valuable lesson, and it kind of changed my life. And Guy knew it, and that's what he wanted to write about. We still talk about wrestling. There's a lot of wrestling stuff in there. I go into a lot more detail on things than I do in the podcast because I don't feel the pressure of having to entertain people for 2 hours and 15 minutes. But it was a fun journey, and I'm excited about it. We got some cool things. Like, this has never been done before, to my knowledge. And I'm probably blowing this for myself in a way. I should keep my mouth shut, but I can't. It's just the way I am. I told you guys I couldn't do 10 minutes. I told you. But in this is the first time that I'm aware of. But when our book comes out on November 11th, 11/11/22, Grateful will come out. At the end of every chapter, there's going to be a QR code. And that QR code is going to take you to an exclusive interview that you cannot see anywhere else of the subject of that particular chapter. In some cases, there may be 2 or 3. It's never been done before. So you get the book, you're going to get an amazing story. Hopefully you're going to come away thinking, maybe I could try that. Maybe that'll turn something around for me. Maybe. Worth a try. What the hell? But you're going to get exclusive interviews that you cannot get anywhere else. And I don't think that's ever been. It'll be a collector's item because it'll be the first one of its kind. And if you order at bischoffbook.com, it'll be autographed by myself and Guy Evans. So pre-order!
I tell you what sounds most appealing about it, especially to sort of a modern day audience, where I think you would all agree that attention spans are kind of dwindling. People can't seem to get off their phones or be distracted by TikTok or whatever. This seems like a book where it's not necessarily important to be chronological. Where sometimes you start a book, or a lot of books, especially autobiographies, are always chronological, and if you leave it, you can't go back to it, or if you leave it for too long, and we have to make a commitment to it. This doesn't seem like a commitment. This seems like I can go on a 2-hour flight. I can read a couple of chapters. They're going to be one thing's going to be about a different thing. Another thing's going to be about a different thing, and you can pick it up and put it down. There's no pressure to chronologically finish the book and know the whole story. It seems like a lot of short stories that you can read, you can pick up and put down, which is, I think, more appealing.
Yeah, I think yes, that will be an advantage because each chapter will really be its own story in a way. It will be somewhat chronological because we want to pick up where Controversy Creates Cash left off, my first book. But at the same time, if you decide to skip chapters and bounce back and forth, each chapter will be its own. It'll be my lesson. It'll be the thing that I learned. Whether anybody else does from it or not, I don't know. And that's not why I wrote it. Again, I'm not trying to be, Tony Robbins, but it was my journey. And I think it was a fun one, and I'm grateful for, obviously. Like I said, been able to bounce back, and yeah, I'm good. But it was a hell of a ride, mentally.
Very innovative, just like you were in history of wrestling with the QR code now in there. That's impressive. I was like, that's a great idea. Never even heard of that before.
That's because it's never been done before, and I'm going to be really honest here. It wasn't my idea. As much as I'd like to be that smart guy, because I am pretty bright, but I didn't think of it. A friend of mine who's also an author and is currently working on a book called The X-Pac, Brad Blajukian, and he wrote a book previously called X-Pac that did very, very well. And it was a story about his journey finding 12 baseball players in the deck of a pack of baseball cards and their story, and it's pretty fascinating idea. And he's doing the same thing right now with a book called The Six Pack about 6 individuals who are part of WrestleMania 3 and 4, and where that story was then and where their lives are now. It was actually his idea, and I asked permission to be the first person to use it. So I got to give credit where credit is due, man. I don't steal people's thunder.
Well, let me give you some credit, actually. You just said that, I've never said this before, but you just said that this isn't a Tony Robbins book. But actually, like, when you wouldn't think controversy creates caches either, but I remember not necessarily parts of the book, but the title of the book and the fact that I believe that to be true. When I went on to Big Brother in 2007, I looked around at the other contestants and realized I wasn't going to be the winner. I didn't have a sob story or anything like that. My parents had money. I was modeling at the time. There are a lot of victims who had really good sob stories in there. They were the winners. So how was I going to make my money from the show? Controversy. Controversy creates cash. I was able to work for 10 years. I've made more money than everybody I lived with in Big Brother because I continue to believe that creed. So whereas I didn't do anything specific like give away the Raw results or anything like that, I remember thinking that in my head the entire time for those 10 years where I continued to make money by just being controversial, just like, you know, brushing off any of the criticisms or whatever, because at the end of the day, just thinking of the most controversial thing to do continued to make me money for years. So thank you for that, because that's always been in the back of my head, that very sentence.
And see, and that's the thing, you know, you never know what's going to make an impression on people. I didn't think about, you know, trying to inspire anybody or giving people motivation in any way, shape, or form when we put that book together. And that's my whole point with Grateful is when I started hearing these stories, because once I got to the point where I went, hey, you know, I have a bad attitude about going to indie shows or making personal appearances or autograph sessions. I looked at them just as a chore and I hated it, but I had to do it because I needed the money.
Can I ask you one question about it? Was it the fact that you just you wasn't sociable, or was it the fact that you didn't want people to see that Eric will question why is Eric Bischoff at these shows?
No. It's because I live in the middle of nowhere, Wyoming.
Right.
You know, I have a handful of very close friends that I very rarely talk to on the phone unless it's an emergency. We stay in touch. We'll get together a couple of times a year, but I'm not a social animal. I don't like being in crowds at all. I live where I live. I built this house here in 98, so it's not like this is a new phase for me. I'm a very, not a loner, but kind of. So going to an event and being on and traveling is just like, I don't want to do this, but I have to do this. But going to some of those events and then hearing stories from people, hearing their story, hearing them tell me their story about how something that I may not have even remembered, how much it impacted them and why. I mean, I'll start crying if I think about it. Writing the book a couple of times, like, oh man, sorry, guy, give me a second here, you know. And it's the same thing with your story about controversy creates cash. There's a million of those stories out there, and if you don't appreciate that when you get an opportunity that you're affecting people's lives, even though you're not aware of it. If you're not aware of it, you're not aware of how much opportunity you really have.
I'm glad you realized that you mean a lot to a lot of people out there, because you're part of us growing up. It's like we didn't know you, but you felt we knew you from seeing you on TV, and you grow up with somebody. And it's one of those things. That's why I always realize, I said, those wackos that stalk the soap opera people, it's because they see them every day and they think they're real and they're in their lives. And I go, that is kind of true a little bit, but on a little saner level, because you're like, with Vince and all his things, when Vince eventually one day passes away, it's gonna hit. I guarantee me and Billy will be hit with it, because it's like, I've known this guy since I was about 7 years old. I don't know him, but I know him, you know? So it's one of those things where, yeah, you don't realize what you're meaning to people and what you've done. Just, just if you take just the industry by itself and what you have done for the entire industry is just beyond.
And obviously my book, thank you for that. And my book is about my journey and realizing that, because I was too caught up in my own. I was too caught up in making money. I was doing it for the money and the fame and the prestige and the same reason, people strive to be at the top of any business and be successful. I was no different. But I didn't realize all the other things that came along with it that I was missing. But I think it's true across the board, right? I imagine there's a million stories from wrestling fans who can tell you how WWE had a dramatic impact on a family member in a positive way, or AEW in a positive way, in stories that you would never imagine. But it's true. You do. If you're a talent in AEW or WWE and you get to go out there and perform someday, if you do it long enough, you got to be around for a minute, but you do it long enough, someday you're going to be at an event. You're going to probably go, oh, I wish I wouldn't have agreed to do this. I'd much rather be out hanging with my buddies or playing with my kids or riding my horse, playing with my dog. But I'm going to do this. And then you're going to hear a story. And that story is going to change your life, hopefully. And it's true across the board. Whether you're a Big Brother, maybe you're a musician, you're a wrestler, an actor, actress, whatever. You got to remember that what you do affects, when you play to the masses, you affect people in ways you don't understand.
Well, we are grateful for you, Eric Bischoff, for being on this show, and we will look for your book on November 11th of this year. And pre-order now. You get it autographed, man.
Let me add as well.
I'm doing it myself.
Eric's not just going to be doing the roast. You can actually meet Eric at StarCast next weekend. Eric, I'm going to be coming out there with my son. So
great! It'll be fun to meet you in person.
Yeah, I'm coming down from London for Raw at Madison Square Garden. Then I'm coming over to Nashville for SummerSlam and the Ric Flair match as well. So
it's going to be great.
Yeah.
Travel around. So thank you, Eric Bischoff, for being with us. We appreciate every minute of your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Had a blast.